Hi everyone, welcome to our first asynchronous class. Um, Got a 10-minute video for you. It will act as a lecture. I mentioned this last time I saw you that because it is a lecture, there's nothing wrong with getting screen grabs of the content, taking notes, because today we're going to build on Monday's conversation and explicitly talk about promotions. I really want you to have a keen takeaway of the difference between public relations and marketing. And don't forget that you have this lecture, any potential readings in Brightspace, and a 10-question quiz that's in Brightspace that closes at the end of the time of our traditional class. So, open book, open notes. You can come back to this video if you like, but to have to watch it again may be a lot, so taking notes is more beneficial. But with that, let's get started and talk about promotions. So right here, super quick recap. We learned on Monday that there's three different types of media. I use media and promotions interchangeably. And a keen focus on public relations is owned media and earned media. So the examples that are underneath the two circled areas here, you want to pay special attention to, especially for the quiz. I am going to give you different examples, and you have to tell me if they're earned, owned, or paid media. So the examples that we talked about on Monday are ridiculously important, and looking at this slide and the examples I'm going to give you here are also important. Over the course of the semester, we are going to look at the psychology of public relations. We're going to look at the affective responses and emotions that are tied to public relations because they matter. And that richer, deeper conversation is forthcoming. But really briefly, what I want to highlight right here is that in the wonderful world of PR, we're storytellers. So when you drive past a billboard on a highway, that's paid media. It's a glimpse of a product, a glimpse of an event. It's a quick snapshot. That's very different than when you open up your favorite magazine or you go to your favorite website and you read an interview of someone that you admire and you get to know more about them. That's a relationship. That's a story being told. And as public relations practitioners, we are interested in telling stories because there's an emotional draw to that. It's how you build long lasting relationships. Think about public relations like dating. You meet someone for the first time, and on that first date, you talk to one another. You're getting to know one another, their values, their attitudes, their interests, all of those different things. We have relationships with different companies, with different influencers, with different people. And those relationships, in some way, shape, or form, were engaging because there were stories to be told that we wanted to hear. We bought into it. And that type of goodwill is often fostered via public relations. I figured you might want a break from my face. So as you can see right here, and that's not me, that's not my face looking up at the text, is that a good public relations practitioner, in order to tell a great story, needs to understand who their client is in the current marketplace. Past perceptions, how they are perceived by their current stakeholders, etc. And once you know who they are, and we'll get more into this when we talk about research on Monday, then you can find the right messages to tap into emotions or to tell thoughtful stories. And then you can translate those stories in the appropriate platforms in rich, meaningful ways. Many of you go to certain communication channels to get your news, to hear about current events, and those platforms are where I can best communicate with you. So if I can tell a thoughtful story, all of a sudden I can build a relationship between you as a consumer or stakeholder and my client who I represent as a public relations practitioner. So we're in the business of telling stories. We're in the business of building rich, thoughtful relationships. As PR professionals, we make news, we tell stories, we garner attention across an array of different things. When you represent your client, it could be the product that they're launching, it could be a new smartphone app or a new streaming service. It could be a significant hire. When Bentley brought in our new president, that was newsworthy. It was newsworthy to current students, potential students, faculty members, to the Waltham community, to the academic community. Telling President Cricht's story was a thoughtful way to build rich relationships between Bentley University and an array of different stakeholders. And the list goes on all the ways in which we can tell stories on behalf of our clients. The idea is that we find these stories rich and impactful. We find the appropriate communication channel to tell them, and we understand who our stakeholders are and how we're going to reach them. And then, last but not least, as you can see above me, is we do this through byline articles, through podcasts, through magazine covers, through op-eds, through social media. And so we'll talk and we'll play around with all the different types of communication channels that exist. The world is your oyster as a public relations practitioner. You're the storyteller. Can you write a story? Can you tell a story? Can you pitch a story that's going to really help elevate your client? We're going to work on what that looks like day to day. But for now, over the next couple of slides, I want to make sure you can distinguish earned, owned, and paid media, because in all these examples, a story is being told that's been negotiated by a public relations practitioner in a specific communication channel with a target audiences that represents a specific client. So let's go through a few examples to get you ready for your quiz. So if you can't tell right here, the client is Savage Fenty. It's a lingerie line created by Robin Rihanna Fenty. And what we see right here is an example of earned media. This is a step and a repeat. So before the fashion show, different actors and talent and model were on the red carpet, being able to take pictures, talk to journalists, and showcase the clothing. Why is it earned media? As you learned on Monday, because Savage Fenty did not have to pay for the media coverage and the promotions that came out of this particular event. It is earned media because it is unpaid, and we know it's not owned media because it is not channels that Savage Fenty owns in their own right. They created a step and repeat, that's the backdrop. The talent, the models are being photographed in Savage Fenty lingerie, and journalists are covering Savage Fenty and promoting it across their different platforms. You may be wondering, well, it's unpaid. Help me make sense out of that. And we talked about this on Monday, but I want to remind you is that the blogs and fashion influencers in this particular example and others, they need content for their readers. And our client right now being Savage Fenty, needs coverage. So when they need content and we need coverage, that's the barter. Hence why it's unpaid. And public relation practitioners organize step and repeat, bring out journalists, coordinate these efforts, and pull together all of the earned media on behalf of the client. This is an example of earned media. So on this slide right here, you see Oliver Cookson, who is a creator of MyProtein, or the founder of MyProtein, being featured on the cover of the Northwest Business Journal. Oliver Cookson's publicist was able to negotiate him being on the cover and him being interviewed for people who visit MyProtein, for people who are fans of healthy eating, building a relationship with someone who they see as aligned with their values and attitudes would matter. Him being on the cover of the magazine and him being interviewed on the magazine allows the Northwest Business Insider to have content for their readers. And of course, as a publicist, we realize we need coverage for our client. So this natural marriage came together. There was no exchange of funds, so it was unpaid. And it's outside of the communication channels that Oliver Cookson has on its own. Another example of earned media. I want to give you one more example to really hit home what earned media looks like, which is the crux of what we do in public relations. And I'm bringing my face back so that you can see me on the same slide as Michelle Obama because she and I are best friends. Another example of earned media. So what you're looking at right now is Michelle Obama doing a tour of different podcasts. So of course, podcast is a form of new media. Hint, hint, take my digital media public relations course next spring. Is a form of earned media because those podcasts need content. Michelle Obama, who is promoting her book, needs coverage, and her publicist negotiated her appearance on these different podcasts in order to make it known about her book, its release date, and to tell stories to build relationships. People who read Michelle Obama's book have a relationship with her, and if they don't have one, the podcast is a great way to introduce it. And if they do have one, it's a new way to reinforce it and to re-enrich it. And so this is another example. It's the last thing I'm going to give you of earned media. But I really want you to think about what that means as a publicist. We looked at 3 different communication channels: a step and repeat, so a field event. We looked at a magazine cover and circulating different podcasts. So there's different ways to tell stories. There's different ways to take our clients and get them in front of audiences and to build rich relationships. And we'll get more into this on Monday. Where we decide to build those relationships matters because we have to know where our audience is. If you think about it, with just this example, folks who love to read often love to listen to podcasts. That makes sense because we can meet them where they are, help build rich relationships, help promote our client and their product, and arguably do the job of what it means to relate to the public in a rich, meaningful way. So, with that said, one more slide, and then I want you to make sure you take the quiz and take it on time. All right, my friends, we are a wrap. I'm bringing it back full circle. So, as you can see, there are different types of media. Paid media being the one that we're probably most familiar with if we've taken a marketing class. But now I need you to focus in on owned and earned media. And earned media being the crux of public relations, but owned media is also a key influential part of that. Again, underneath both of those circles are examples. You should be familiar with those. I've given you additional illustrations of those. Media and promotions are used interchangeably, hence the title of this lecture, but I really want you to be comfortable with this. Also, before you leave me, there'll be one question on the quiz where it just says, in my conversation with you, I mentioned an answer. The answer that you need to put for that particular question is D. D as in David. So it'll say, based on the lecture video, please mark the answer mentioned by Dr. Stamps. That answer is D. That is me giving you the answer to the question for getting through the video. So now, please make sure you've taken your notes, you have access to any readings, because the quiz is open book, open note, but you only get one chance to take it, and you need to take it before the end of our traditional in-person class time slot. Good luck, and I will see you all on Monday.